Hi everyone, this is lesson 7, problem set. So today's lesson just takes us more in depth into the line plot. So let's look at number 1. Mrs. West's class grew beans for a science experiment. The students measured the heights of their bean plants to the nearest quarter inch and recorded the measurements as shown below. So this table or chart shows all the different measurements. So one plant was 2 1/4 inches, one was 1 3/4 inches, and one was 2, and so on and so on. So in letter A, it says to use the data to complete the line plot below. All right, so what would we title this line plot? Well, if you think about it, if you go back to the table, the best way to title it is just the title of the table. So again, I apologize if this pen does not work right, but all right, let's do this. Actually, maybe if I make it thicker, it might help. Okay. Heights of bean plants. Okay, I just copied that from up above. Now, what should we label it at the bottom, and what should each X equal? Well, let's go to the X first. If you think about all the problems we've done so far, the X is always equal to one thing, whether it's a student or a caterpillar. So I think in this case it makes sense for each X to be one plant, right? So we're going to write, okay, I'm going to try to write one plant. Okay, and our label here is what these numbers on the number line actually represent. What does 1 3/4 stand for? Well, if we go back up here, that's the inches, okay? So we're going to label this inches. I-N-C-H-E-S. All right, so in order to make a line plot, all we're going to do is we're going to go through each measurement and put an X above that section. So the first one is 2 1/4. So I go down to the bottom, I find 2 1/4. Oh boy, every time I guess I need to fix this so it'll work. Okay, so 2 1/4 is here. Then I'm going to go to the next one underneath it, 1 3/4. So I find 1 3/4 over here. Okay. And I want to try to make it the same height of an X as the one I've already done. Then I've got 2 inches. Then I've got 2 1/2 inches, which is over here. I'm going to go to my next column. 2 3/4 inches, right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the recording and fill in my line plot, and you fill in yours, continuing the same way, and then we'll compare them at the end. Okay, so when you're done, according to my calculations, you should have 4 in the 1 3/4 column, 2 in the 2 inches column, then 3, then 3, then 2, oops, then 3, then 3. Okay, and remember, you want your columns of 3 to all be the same height, and you want your columns of 2 to be the same height the best you can do it. So one thing I want you to do is count up your total number of X's. Your total number of X's has to match your total bean plants up at the top. So we've got 4 rows, 5 in each row. That's 4 times 5. So we should have 20 X's. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. I have 20 X's, so mine is accurately showing at least 20 plants. There's always a chance you put the plant in the wrong column, but if you're taking your time, maybe a good strategy would be once you make the X down here, you cross it off in the table, and that might help you stay organized. Just cross it off, put a little slash through it. Don't scribble it out because you may want that information later, okay? All right, so I'm going to just erase that in case I need it. All right, so we are back on the back page now. So Question B says how many bean plants are at least 2¼ inches tall? So that means we include 2¼ inches when we figure out our data. So here's my 2¼ inches. I'm counting the ones in that column and everything over to the right. So I'm going to skip count by threes. I've got 3, 6, 9, 12, and then 13, 14. So the answer here is going to be 14. Okay. How many bean plants are taller than 2 3/4 inches? Okay, so taller than 2 3/4 means we do not include 2 3/4. So I'm just looking at the 3 and the 3¼ So I've got 3 plants here and 3 plants here. So 3 plus 3 is 6. Letter D. What is the most frequent measurement? Okay, so that's another term that's common in graphing. Most frequent means the size, in this case, that was the most often. Okay, so in other words, which part of our line plot has the tallest column? Well, most often was the very first one, 1 3/4, because we had 4 plants at that height. The rest were all less. So I'm going to write 1. Oh my goodness. 1 3/4. It's weird. It's like there's dead spots on the screen. Okay. So the next part of question D says how many bean plants were plotted for this measurement? Okay, we just said there were 4, so we're going to put 4 there. All right, 2 more questions. Letter E. George says that most of the bean plants are at least 3 inches tall. Is he right? Explain your answer. So at least 3 inches means we're going to include the 3 inches and anything more. So we've got 6 plants here. That means if we had a total of 20, we've got 14 here. So are most of the bean plants at least 3 inches tall? No. So no, because there are 14 plants smaller than 3 inches. Okay? Most of the plants are less than 3 inches tall is what is the true statement there. Okay? And then the very last question says, Sandy was absent the day the class measured the height of their bean plants. She measured hers when she returned to school, and it was 2 2/4 inches tall. Can Savannah plot the height of her bean plant on the class line plot? Why or why not? So 2 2/4. Well, let's look at that line plot. Your number line here does not have 2 2/4. But if we think about fractions and think about lesson 5 from Wednesday, if you think about, I'm going to try to draw a number line here, okay? 2 number lines, all right? If this one shows fourths, so we've got 0, 1, 2, 3, okay? So 2 2/4 means I'm going at least 2 inches down, and then I've got to break my last section into 4 sections. Now I've got fourths, so I'm going to hop 1, 2. So 2 2/4 is right there. Okay. Well, our number line doesn't have where 2/4 would be, but if you look at 2/4, or excuse me, if you look at the number line, look at 2 1/4. Then what would be the next number of fourths after that? 2/4, right? Because then here we have 3/4. So really what we're saying is, okay, if I make my second number line in halves, I've got 0, 1, 2, 3. And if I break this into halves, 2 1/2 would be right here. Oh boy, it's not going to let me work here. There. Okay, so this is actually 2.5. So essentially, 2.5 is the same as 2 and 2/4. And you can see that on this number line. If you start at 2 1/4, you're hopping down just a regular number line. This would be 2 2/4, 2 3/4, 2 4/4, which is actually 2 plus another whole, or 3. So, can she put it on there? Yes, because 2 2/4 is equal to 2 1/2. Okay? This is just really kind of revisiting measurement and fractions in the graphing unit. Okay? So go ahead and get started on your homework for lesson 7.